Hi everyone, in this video I wanted to talk about Dragonite's most popular skill set, Hyper Beam and Dragon Dance. Dragonite is the literal definition of an all-rounder in that he can literally do it all. He can go center, he can go lane, he can tank, he can do damage, he can sustain, he can get around the map quickly, he can secure objectives, and he can disrupt the enemy team. He can be slotted into any team composition and do well. And the Hyper Beam and Dragon Dance build is what brings out his full potential. You have a ranged attacker who has a lot of mobility, a lot of damage, and is quite tanky. So let's talk about the skills that make up this build, and then we'll discuss possible item choices that best support this playstyle. So as much as I want to talk about Hyper Beam, I actually have to first talk about Dragon Dance. This is because Hyper Beam gets powered up by Dragon Dance, so let's talk about it first. Dragon Dance is such a great move. First of all, it's a very short cooldown dash. Not only that, it also increases Dragonite's attack speed, movement speed, and attack damage. And if that wasn't enough, these buffs can be stacked up to 3 times. So right now, at 3 stacks, Dragonite gets a 24% damage increase. Because Dragonite scales off attack damage, this means that not only does it buff the damage of his basic attacks, it also increases the damage of all his skills as well. And at high levels, if Dragonite ends his Dragon Dance nearby enemies, he also gets an increased movement speed boost. I know what you're thinking, this skill does it all, but wait, there's more. Each of Dragonite's basic attacks will also reduce the cooldown of this skill, which means that already short cooldown can be brought down even lower. Which is insane because that makes Dragonite one of the best ranged attackers in the game. It gives him everything that a ranged attacker wants. It gives him move speed to help chase and run away, as well as a dash for extra mobility, and it also increases attack damage and attack speed. If you compare him to dedicated ranged attackers like Cinderace or Greninja, the only thing he's lacking is 10% crit rate and a little bit of range, which he makes up for with his extra defensive stats. But remember when I mentioned that basic attacks will reduce the cooldown of Dragon Dance? Well, in Dragonite's kit, all of Dragonite's boosted attacks actually reduce the cooldowns of all his skills, on top of their additional effects. Which means boosted attacks reduces the cooldown of Dragon Dance by 2 seconds instead of 1. Now let's talk about the signature skill of this build, Hyper Beam. This skill is definitely overtuned and due for a nerf next patch. Let's talk about what it currently does so that we're all on the same page. Not only does this skill have high damage scaling, it also deals percentage health damage based on the enemy's maximum HP. And if you're using Dragon Dance, this amount of percentage HP damage increases even more. So not only is Dragon Dance increasing Dragonite's attack damage, which increases the power of Hyper Beam, the percentage damage on Hyper Beam is also increased by the number of stacks of Dragon Dance, which means Dragon Dance is doing double duty on this skill. At 3 stacks of Dragon Dance, that percentage HP damage is 20% of the maximum HP of the enemy Pokemon. 20%! That's not even including the base damage that it deals. I mean, even after you take into account damage reduction, you're probably still doing about a quarter of a Pokemon's HP. And if you manage to somehow land it on more than one Pokemon, that team fight might as well be over. Of course, when you throw Buddy Barrier into the mix, things might change. But we're still talking about a ton of damage that usually comes out in a Unite move that's not even a Unite move. One last thing about Hyper Beam is that at level 13, it also decreases the damage that he takes by half when he's using it. For reference, the other damage reduction skill in the game that comes to mind is Venusaur's Giga Drain, which only reduces it by 35%. I'm just gonna let that sink in. And let's not forget about his passive multiscale, which also decreases the damage that Dragonite takes for a short period of time. So in that short 2.5 seconds of multiscale, if Dragonite uses Hyper Beam, that's a 70% damage reduction. And then you have to factor in the amount of defense and special defense that he has. He could truly be one of the tankiest Pokemon in the game during that time. But of course, no skill is perfect, and Hyper Beam has a glaring weakness that it can be dodged, as the area of effect is clear and the enemy has the chance to walk out of it after Hyper Beam is cast. So the final thing to talk about is Dragonite's Unite move. Dragonite's Unite move allows him to jump about a quarter of the map, depending on the amount of Unite charge that he uses. At minimum distance it uses 25% charge, and at maximum distance it uses 100%. When Dragonite lands, he deals damage and knocks up everyone around him. So let's quickly talk about the different uses of Dragonite's Unite move. The first one is just to activate Buddy Barrier. For example, if you jump on the space that you're in, you only lose 25% of the charge, which you can get back fairly quickly just by killing a few wild Pokemon or scoring. This means that Dragonite would almost always have his Unite move up for every teamfight. The other use of his Unite move is to travel the map. For example, if you take Dreadnought at bottom, you can use his Unite move to get up to the top lane as fast as possible. It can also be used to save your teammates when you see that they're in trouble by jumping to them and knocking up the enemy team. But it can actually also be used to just escape in general. Because after you use your Unite move, you have a large move speed increase, you can just jump a short distance and just run away. At that speed, unless they're also using their Unite move, they probably won't be able to catch you, which means you either get away for almost free, or they use their Unite move and theirs won't be up, but yours will be back up for the next fight. The other use of Dragonite's Unite move is to quickly get to the enemy goal zones. If you somehow manage to lose Zapdos, rather than defending, it's sometimes better to just go on the offense and counter score. This will definitely allow you to get to their point and score before they can score and return back and defend. It just provides so much utility, allowing you to attack and defend. For battle items, I believe Buddy Barrier and Muscle Band are pretty much mandatory on Dragonite. With how often Dragonite uses his Unite move, if you're not using Buddy Barrier, you're probably trolling. As for Muscle Band, not only does it take advantage of the fact that Dragonite is ranged, it also allows him to get as many boosted attacks as possible. Although you can't control which boosted attack gets used, they're all very useful in their own way. On top of reducing his move cooldowns, the blue one heals, the yellow one stuns, and the red one deals extra percentage damage. For the last item, you have a few choices depending on your playstyle. I usually run Focus Band or Razor Claw depending on where I am, or what my team looks like. If my team has no frontline Pokemon, I'm more likely to run Focus Band because I'll need the extra tankiness. However, if I want the extra damage, I'll run Razor Claw. I've been experimenting with running Razor Claw on Dragonite recently, so that I can take advantage of the increased attack damage and also the constant activations of Dragon Dance. It's definitely a more fun way of playing Dragonite, but I probably wouldn't recommend it unless you have some sort of support with you, or you're lucky enough to go into the center. Now, I'm not sure if it's a bug, but Razor Claw does apply the slow with Dragonite, so that's definitely a bonus. It's probably because he's an all-rounder and is coded that way, but expect that to get patched out next patch. The other item you usually see is Score Shield, which synergizes really well with his Unite move, and is really good for getting those sneaky dunks in. Other than that, the only other item I can really see working is the Weakness Policy. That's probably more useful for Outrage Dragonite than Hyper Beam Dragonite. For battle items, I personally prefer running Eject Button, but there are definitely other items that work really well on Dragonite. Another item that I've seen work really well on Dragonite is Full Heal. You want to be outputting as much damage as possible, and you want to be sure that you're activating your Dragon Dance and Hyper Beam, as once you lose stacks of Dragon Dance, you lose your tempo and you lose a lot of damage. One of the most frustrating counters I've run across is a Blastoise running Surf. This is especially true when you're trying to fight for Dreadnought or Zapdos, because when you start charging up the Hyper Beam, he can just use Surf on you and take you out of the fight. Similar things can happen with Talonflame and Snorlax, so running Full Heal will be able to prevent that. Goal Getter could also work if you're all about that Score Shield life, but I find it less useful in general, so I wouldn't recommend it. But if you do run Goal Getter, I do recommend running Score Shield. It's just not the way I like to play it. Thanks for checking out my Hyper Beam Dragonite guide. I hope that you found this video useful. If you like this type of video, please like and subscribe for more content. Since you're interested in Dragonite, please check out my other video on his other build, Outrage, and make a decision for yourself which build works for you.